USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com, featuring conversations with college hockey coaches and players and journalists who cover the sport.
Welcome to USCHO Spotlight for Wednesday, January 5th, 2022. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly. This podcast is brought to you by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Membership required. Find out today by visiting dcu.org. Well, one team off to a great start and shaking things up in the Big Ten is Ohio State.
And joining us on this week's USCHO Spotlight, the head coach of Ohio State, that's Steve Rohlik. And Steve, welcome in first off. And what a nice return to break. This has been 2 wins this past weekend. You now have a 5-game overall winning streak for your team. What do you like about this year's club?
Well, you know what? First and foremost, what I like is we've been able to be together. We've been able to preseason work out together, be in the locker room together. A lot of those things that none of us had last year. And I think that's a huge plus for us, a huge plus for our culture. And I think that's really been the number one reason for, again, our group and our success so far.
I look at this team, picked last in the Big Ten. Now you're nationally ranked. When you look at this club on the ice, what does it do very well at this point? What are some of the strides you've taken since the opening of the season that has given you at least a good modicum of success at this point?
Well, I'd say that, the number one thing is out of my group is, we believe and we're going to hang in there for 60 minutes. I think no matter if we're up a few or down a few or whatever that is, like we've really made it, a kind of a team thing that, we got to play 60 minutes and, we want to be good in the third period. We want to be good when it counts. And that's something our team's hung their hat on a little bit. I would say I'd certainly like to be more consistent. We're could be period by period. It could be shift by shift sometimes, which, for me, I'd like to get better in those areas and also special teams. We've struggled in those departments and, I think we can continue to get better there. And that's something we've been working on.
I look at rosters and I think sometimes people don't understand what a freshman class can make in terms of an impact coming in. But, your top 2 scorers being freshmen, the goaltender that seems to be, playing most of the time as a freshman. How much did you understand that this freshman class could walk in the door and maybe not just be players that had to get up to speed, not going to be innocent bystanders in the first half, and could really make the impact that they have?
That's a great point, because I think as long as I've been in this, even when you think you have 2, 3, 4 impact guys, sometimes that doesn't come to fruition because it is a big jump for freshmen to step in at this level. And so I give a lot of credit to our returning guys. I think, again, we look at it as one group, and I think they made the transition easier for these young guys. And again, as a coach, it's always nice to see these guys contribute. I never expect or ask any young guy to come in and carry the mail. And I think these guys have fit in very well. And again, they're a big part of it, and they're only one part of it, the success that we've been having.
Steve, obviously it's hard to determine where a team is going to be before the season when the coaches vote. But what's your view overall on the competitiveness within Big Ten? And then secondly, the competitiveness of the league on the whole Division I college hockey landscape?
Well, I think you hit it on the head. It's an unbelievable league. It forces you to be a better coach. It forces your players to be better. If you show up and don't have your best night, the odds are you're probably not winning that game, no matter who you're playing in our league. And, we're obviously all hoping that at the end of the day, it makes us all better, for a playoff push. But you know what? It's anybody's ball game from top to bottom, and it has been that way since I've been in this league. So it's outstanding. It's going to continue to get better, and we're just obviously fortunate to be part of it.
When we talk about parity, really college hockey, top to bottom across all leagues, has gotten a whole lot tighter over the last few years. Is there anything you can point to that has led to that?
Well, you know what? you're right. I mean, it's so hard to win at the college level, no matter who you're playing. The parity's off the charts. It's never been like this in the history of college hockey. What the parity's like, I think a lot of it had to do with a little bit of the early recruiting, and it forced everybody to make some decisions. And sometimes you make mistakes, and sometimes you don't. And it kind of put everybody almost on even playing field. So you're kind of seeing all these schools be able to, hey, if you get younger kids, you mix in the older kids, and you can go out there and compete every night. And I think these coaches are a heck of a lot smarter right now of going out and finding what works for them, and they're making that work for their program. And it's been pretty impressive.
Big Ten hockey grew from the original 6 hockey teams to 7 with the addition of Notre Dame. Is this something that you're looking to grow even more? Is this something you and the coaches and the league discuss and are looking at actively?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking at the game and how do we make things better? How do we make our league better? College hockey in general. Do we continue to look at adding teams? You certainly don't want to lose teams. And, for us, again, in the Big Ten, there's certain standards and parameters that are laid down by the presidents and the athletic directors that we have to follow as far as membership. And so all that is part of our discussions.
When we talk about recruiting, one of the things that's really added some complexity is the new transfer rule and adding temporarily some fifth-year seniors. How are you at Ohio State approaching this?
Well, again, it's certainly thrown a huge wrinkle on this whole prospects of the recruiting of it. And it keeps a coach on his toes, that's for sure. And we just approach it day by day. I mean, we just got to continue to look at what's best for our program. You got to continue at, as the transfer portals and guys go in the portals, you want to do your due diligence on the homework of who this individual is, what they can bring to your program, and also personality and how they fit in your culture. I think there's a lot at stake there when you go through that process, and so that you have to even out with freshman classes, how many you're bringing in, and then how many guys are coming back, because some of your seniors, they might want to come back for another year. Maybe they sign and go pro, maybe they go work for a Fortune 500 company. There's so many balls in the air right now as you continue to go through this, that it really becomes a day-to-day process.
Almost, as some people have said, like free agency every spring.
Well, yeah, you could look at it that way. But again, you got to be careful sometimes, and you just really got to trust your staff. You got to trust your process, and you got to trust your culture.
More with Ohio State's Steve Rohlik in a moment. This podcast is brought to you by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. Visit dcu.org.
This is the USCHO Spotlight, a weekly podcast from US College Hockey Online.
Know how people say life happens? Well, for me, life was happening, and I needed a new truck. I didn't have time to shop around for a good loan, so I got one from the dealer, higher interest and all. Month after month, those payments were squeezing me. So I went to DCU. They refinanced my loan and helped lower my rate, which lowered my payments. These days, I have more money in my pocket for whatever life throws at me. What will DCU mean to you? Insured by NCUA. Membership required. Visit dcu.org.
Back with Ohio State head coach Steve Rohlik. Well, we mentioned near the beginning about this weekend's games with Wisconsin being called off. With the increase in the variant, coupled with having a seasons of experience of dealing with it, how has your team reacted to it? How are you dealing with the advent of COVID again?
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, we've gone through this for a while now. And, again, first and foremost, I hate the stigma that you're doing something wrong, if you get COVID. It's something that's out there. What we try to teach is to do the best job we can to prevent. Be it mask up or, social distance or washing your hands, doing all these kind of things to do the best job we can to help prevent. We know that there's going to be some issues out there, and you have to have flexibility. And as a coach, when you walk in every day to the office, what your game plan is for that practice or lines or power plays might change dramatically day to day. And that's something that we've really had to learn to live with here for a while, unfortunately.
Steve, we mentioned it. You're now off this weekend with the postponement of the Wisconsin series. What does that do in terms of change things for you? How do you keep the guys engaged? I know you can only probably run so many practices where you go over forechecks and power plays and special teams that you've got to kind of change things up. What are you doing this week for practices to change things?
Well, again, I mean, we just obviously heard the news, late yesterday afternoon. And so our approach is just like any other day. Today's another day and an opportunity for us to get better as a program. We got to continue to push the development process, big picture things. And then also, who knows what we understand that things could change within the hour, within the day. So we got to be on our toes and be prepared whenever things get rescheduled. And if these games get rescheduled this week, next week, whenever that is, we got to be prepared for it. And if not, we'll look at, taking the time off we need for school and rest and all that, besides going out there and continue to try to push these guys to be the best we can be.
Obviously, Michigan has been a team that has been really strong and everybody had high expectations from. You have a series with them right before the break, losing the first game, but then winning really impressively, I thought, watching that game. The third period, you closed that game well. Was there some lessons you maybe learned from that weekend that have started things going in the right direction now that 6-1 win on December 11th started the current 5-game win streak you're on?
Well, again, anytime you win at this level, it's a good night. And no matter who you're playing and you got to be at your best. And, again, for us, coming out of there, it's just basically everything's a 1-game shot. And we move out of that and then we just try to get better and start to ride some momentum. And I think confidence goes along with that. And so when you got a team that, you can put a win or two together and you start kind of gaining some confidence, it helps your culture. It helps your everyday practice habits. It helps your development. And, again, that's the wave you try to ride. And for us, we know it can end at any minute. And that's why we prepare as well as we do and hard as we do during the week, because you win most of your games Monday through Thursday.
Both Ed and I already mentioned this, but you were picked to finish at the bottom of the Big Ten this year, and we as Ed said, it doesn't matter top to bottom. It usually the number 1 team and number 7 team is still probably pretty close in the standings. But does being picked at the bottom put any sort of a chip on the shoulder of the players?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it is what it is. That's why it's done at the beginning of the year. I mean, our job is to go out there, become a better hockey team and try to do that every day. And you know what? I mean, it forces us to be a better program. And again, everything that counts is at the end of the year. We could be picked first, but I would feel the same way, or third or fifth. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is trying to become a better program every day and every week. And that's all we talk about.
Well, it is all Big Ten from here on out for you. It starts, will be next weekend now, hosting Notre Dame after this weekend series was postponed. But Steve, obviously a great start to this year for you. Great job through the midway point. We appreciate your time. We always love talking with you, and keep up the good work. This has been a great season for Ohio State so far.
I really appreciate it. Thanks, you guys, for having me on today.
That's Ohio State's Steve Rohlik. Jim, it seems like every year there's going to be a team that's picked at the bottom who's going to surprise everybody. And it looks like this year that team in the Big Ten is Ohio State.
Yeah, I think I was a little surprised to see them at the bottom, but then I sat there and asked myself, well, who should go there? Who should be at the bottom? I know that Michigan State was an improved team, and maybe they were a team that you'd maybe looked to take that last spot in the poll. But the reality is this is a good league top to bottom. Even Hockey East, even the NCHC can't really claim that, all 11 teams in Hockey East or all 8 teams in the NCHC have a chance to win the title. I truly believe that in the Big Ten. I think that every single one of these teams has the talent level. And we've now seen it with Ohio State. It's a team that, as we mentioned with Steve, very freshman heavy. Three of the top 5 scorers are freshmen. Their goaltender, who's carried the water all season, he's a freshman. When you get those performances out of your rookie class, they have to fill holes, and it's very difficult as a coach, as Steve mentioned, to put a lot of pressure on your freshmen. But if you put a little bit of pressure there and then they respond as they have to date, you're going to have a lot of success.
The past several years, the NCHC has been considered the top conference in college hockey, but the Big Ten seems to be matching up pretty well, top to bottom, very competitive, and the out-of-conference winning percentages are nearly identical. It's almost as if you have to put them right next to each other, maybe 1A and 1B.
Certainly. I think the Big Ten has made some great strides from their first seasons. They have, like I said, there's just not a sleeper team in there. I think, you look at Michigan and what they have, Minnesota, what they have. Penn State is a better team than a lot of people thought they were going to be. We mentioned Ohio State, Michigan State has been pretty strong. Notre Dame, every team in that league, Wisconsin, even, you see how they played out of the break, winning their own conference, their own holiday tournament. This is a league where you can't sleep on them. And, out of conference play is done. I think every one of those teams has finished all of their out of conference games. So we're not going to have to talk a lot about that. It's all insular here on out. But anybody that's played a Big Ten team in out of conference play understands that there was no sleepers in this league this year.
We talked about the transfer rule and fifth-year seniors. You couple that with more competitive recruiting. This is really a complicated situation for head coaches and their staffs. It could turn into a real mess.
Yeah, it's a nightmare sometimes. But it's what the players wanted, and I understand it. You don't want to be locked in. As somebody said, you could be, a player and one of the coaches could leave. Maybe it's not the head coach, but maybe an assistant leaves. That was the guy that recruited you. And suddenly your position in the team changes. So you have to give the players some flexibility too. And that's what the transfer portal and the, one-time transfer rule, allowed. But you look at how it happens. Is it the extra year you throw that in because of COVID, and you have some, really good graduate players that transferred. You had a lot of good players that did so earlier in their careers, for freshmen and sophomores that wanted a new look, and they've gone to different teams. But as coaches, it's a lot of management. And that's the most difficult part is I can remember, Jerry York and I sat down many years ago and he had a whiteboard where it had this year's entire team. And then it had what his team was going to look like a year from then, 2 years from then, and then 3 years from then, with all of his recruits factoring in and all of the graduating players and the players that he thought would leave for the NHL and all of that sort of stuff. And I don't think any coach can do that anymore because you don't know what your team is going to look like year to year. It's not just players leaving for the NHL anymore, pro ranks. This is now a world where you can transfer out and nobody can say boo about it because that is the rule. You get one chance to transfer and people are taking advantage of it.
Well, as we mentioned at the top, games called off this weekend versus Wisconsin for Ohio State, but they'll take on Notre Dame, hosting them a weekend hence. This podcast has been sponsored by DCU, Digital Federal Credit Union. What will DCU mean to you? Membership required. Find out today by visiting dcu.org. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger. We'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Spotlight, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.